okay, about our organization and what we do, okay? So I have a short presentation that I want to go through with you. So hold on a second while I share my screen and this presentation I prepared. Okay, so here is a presentation. And I will do a self-introduction based on this presentation. Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you about why you should consider studying abroad in Japan. Okay, I don't think many of you have ever thought about Japan or why you should come to Japan, but I am here in Japan and I want to tell you a little bit about the opportunities that you can have if you come to Japan to study. Okay, so today I want to talk to you about a few things. One, I want to introduce you to our organization. So the organization I represent is called Study Abroad Research Institute. So before I talk about Japan, I want to introduce me and this organization to you. Okay, so after I introduce myself, I will talk a little bit about what's the benefit for you to consider studying abroad in Japan. Okay, from two aspects. One is you can earn good money after you graduate from university here. And two is how do you pay for the education? Okay, many of you are probably thinking about is it expensive to come to Japan? And is there scholarships for studying in Japan, for example? So I will provide the information there. Okay, and at the last point, after I introduce Japan, I will talk a little bit about how our organization can help you get into a university in Japan. Okay, so these are what we'll talk about today. It'll take maybe less than 30 minutes. Okay, so let's start from the top. What is our organization? Okay, so we are a nonprofit organization. We're based in Tokyo in Japan, and we help students from outside of Japan to consider studying abroad in Japan. Okay, oh, seems like there's a question. Just a second. Okay, yeah, I will continue presenting. Okay, all right. So we're a nonprofit organization that helps students from outside Japan consider how to study in Japan. We give you the information that you need to apply for universities here. As I said, we are in Tokyo and we mostly help African students for the moment. And this is entirely free to you. We're not a business, so we don't charge you money for any of our services. So for us, what we do is we reach out to students and we reach out to schools and we reach out to the government. Okay, so we talk to students like you to tell you about how to go to universities in Japan. And then we also talk to universities in Japan, okay, about how to accept more foreign students like you to go study there. And then we also talk to the government so that the government can have policies to encourage more foreign students to come to Japan to study. Okay. So why is our organization doing this? How are we qualified to do this? Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about myself, okay, just to introduce myself. So I started this organization last year to help many foreign students consider how to go to Japanese universities. I was born in China. I'm Chinese. I moved to Japan when I was 5 years old. Okay, so from very young age, I lived in Japan. And then I moved to the US when I was 12 years old. Okay, so my family moved around quite a bit when I was young. And I studied abroad in many places, right? So I studied in university in the US, also in Australia, also in Britain, the UK. And right now I am studying in the University of Tokyo in Japan. Okay, so I have personal experience with studying in Japanese universities, so I can tell you a lot about how to get into universities here based on my personal experience as well. And before I started school in the University of Tokyo, I was living in Tanzania, in East Africa, I'm working for a nonprofit organization there. So when I was working in Tanzania, I applied for a university in Japan and got into the University of Tokyo. So I can tell you how to apply for a Japanese university while you're in Africa. Okay, so I have personal experience with that as well. So I can tell you a little bit about that. Okay, so that's my self-introduction. Now let's talk about what are the benefits for you to study in Japan. Okay, first let's talk about the benefits after you graduate, right? After you graduate, you can earn a pretty good salary in Japan. So I give you some numbers so that you know what are the salaries like here in Japan. For example, in 2019, this is the average salary in Japan. It's about $39,000 per year, okay, US dollars per year. That's the average salary, yearly salary in Japan for everyone. For people who live in Tokyo, the big city that I'm living in right now, the salary tends to be higher, right? It's about $50,000 a year. Okay? And for people who work in highly demanded jobs like IT consultants, there are many people who want to become IT consultants because there is a lot of demand and it's a very good job in terms of pay, right? So for IT consultants, the average salary is about $58,000. So it's even higher than the average for everyone in Tokyo. Okay? And those numbers are just for people who have bachelor's degree. If you go to graduate school and you get master's degree and PhD, doctor's degree, then you're paid even higher than that by about 20% and about 40%. Okay? So the more education you get, the higher your salary becomes. And why is it good for foreign students to get a job here in Japan? One reason is that Japan is running out of workers. There are very few workers now, so they're in need of many workers today. Okay, for example, here's a graph, right? So this is a graph of how many jobs are available for each person who's applying for a job. So in 2019, there are 2.5 jobs on average available for every person who is looking for a job, right? So there are many jobs and not enough people who are unemployed, right? So that's why they need more people to come to Japan and work here, right? Because there are many jobs available, but not enough workers, okay? And also at the same time, Japan's population is declining, right? There are fewer and fewer people now in Japan. So that means in the future, there are even more need for foreign workers. Here, I give you the number, okay? Right now, the Japanese population is about 130 million today. At the end of this century, by 2100, the population will shrink to about 85 million, right? So the population is actually declining here, right? It's not growing. So there are fewer and fewer people in Japan. That means they need more and more foreign people like yourself to come here and work, okay? So as I said, there are fewer workers. So if there are fewer workers, that means the salary will only increase over time. So that's some of the reason you should come to Japan, because after you graduate, you can make a good living. Okay, now let me talk a little bit about how to get education. Okay, some of you may think that the education here might be very expensive. Okay, in some ways that's true, but let me go into a little bit of details about how expensive it is and how you can pay for the education here. Okay. So getting a degree in Japan is actually cheaper than in many other countries. Okay, if you go to other Western countries, it tends to be much more expensive than getting an education in Japan. Let me give you some numbers as example. Okay, so I went to a school called Yale in the U.S. for education. So there, every year, the tuition, the school fees are about $45,000 a year. Okay, so it's very expensive. Yeah. So this is the U.S. In London, right? This is the U.K. Yeah, Britain. It's about something between $38,000 to $51,000 a year. So it's also very expensive in the U.K. In Australia, in the University of Sydney, where I also went to school, it goes somewhere between $26,000 to $41,000 a year. Also very expensive. So you see that these three schools in these three countries, they are about the same thing in terms of tuition. Okay, they're all pretty expensive. Now let's compare that to the University of Tokyo, where I go to school now. University of Tokyo is a lot cheaper. Okay, it's about $5,000 a year for tuition, right? So compared to the US and the UK, for example, it's only 10% of the cost. So it's much cheaper compared to these Western universities I just talked about. Okay. All right. So, but $5,000 is still a lot of money, right? So how do you pay for school here, right? Let me talk to you a little bit about how to pay for it. So many of you are probably wondering what kind of scholarships are available for students to study in Japan. Okay. There's an organization called Japan Student Services Organization. This is a government organization. And every year they publish a pamphlet, a little booklet that contains information about all the different scholarships that are available. Okay. So I can provide you a little bit of summary from this booklet. First of all, there's many different types of scholarships that are available for foreign students in Japan. Okay, and these below are some of the examples. So on one hand, we have the national government scholarship. So the national government in Japan offers scholarship to foreign students. So these scholarships, you get all of your tuition paid for. So you don't have to pay for any school fees. You also get a round-trip airplane ticket from Nigeria or somewhere else from your hometown to come to Japan and then go back home later on. Then you also, on top of that, you also get about $1,400 in cash every month that you can pay for your living expenses, right? You need to eat, you need to live in Japan. All of that will cost money. So this scholarship will give you the cash you need to pay for those. Okay. That's national government scholarship. Aside from that, there's also regional government scholarship, right? These regional government scholarships. There are free tuition. So like the government scholarship, you don't pay for school fees. And they also give you about $900 per month in cash that you can use to pay for your living expenses. So aside from government scholarships, there are also a lot of private foundations. So these are other NGOs, nonprofit organizations, or businesses, or charities that are giving students money to study in Japan. And they give about $1,900 per month to each foreign students who get the scholarship, so they can pay for school fees and living expenses while they live in Japan and study. Okay, so these are only some of the examples of the scholarships available. There are also other scholarships that are not included in this pamphlet I just talked about. So there are actually quite many options for you to come and get a scholarship to study. Okay. But aside from getting scholarships, you can also earn money while you're studying in Japan by working in a part-time job. So Japan's student visa, it allows you to work up to 28 hours a week in a job while you are a student. Okay, so many foreign students, they get a part-time job while they are also studying in Japan. Okay. And here are some examples of foreign students working in different jobs. One example is teaching English, right? Many people teach English as foreigners. And you can get paid about $39 an hour for teaching English. So it's actually a very good pay for a part-time job. Many other people working a store or working a restaurant. This is going to be easier than teaching English to get a job. There are many more demands for this kind of job, and you get paid about $14 per hour for this kind of job. And there are also people who work in factory or work in construction sites or work in warehouses. And this is, of course, a harder work than working in a store in a restaurant, but you get paid better. You get paid double the amount, about 28 hours, $28 an hour. So if you look at this this amount of money per hour, and then you consider you can work about 28 hours a week, it's actually adds up to quite a lot of money that you can use, you can earn, and then use to pay for your living expenses while you're in Japan. Okay. All right. So that's how you pay for school in Japan. All right. So, okay, at the very last, let me talk to you a little bit about how our organization can help you. Right. So there are many things that you need to do while you come to study in Japan, right? You have to prepare many things. One is you might need to learn the language. Okay. Many Japanese universities, they take students who know at least a little bit about the Japanese language. And many companies in Japan, they take workers from outside of Japan only if they can speak the language. Okay. So sometimes it becomes very, very important for you to learn to speak Japanese. And we can help you find classes after you come to Japan to learn the language. Okay? There are many schools that are teaching language to foreigners who are studying universities in Japan. So there are many options. Also, we can tell you about different courses in Japanese universities. Okay, there are many courses that you can apply to, many programs, but which one should you apply to is something that we can maybe advise you a little bit about if you don't have any ideas. Okay, we have a website that include all of the information of our partner universities, the universities that we work with in Japan, so that you can directly look at the information that are available and how to apply. Aside from the information on our website, if you have any questions, we can certainly help you answer. Okay, how do you apply for schools? How do you apply for scholarships? If you're not clear, then you can email us or contact us by Facebook, for example, and we can answer your questions. Last, we can provide you information about what it's like to live in Japan. Okay, maybe schools can tell you about what is it like to study there, but life in Japan is not just about going to school. There are other aspects of it, and we can provide you information on how to live here outside of just studying. Okay? And we have, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have many partnerships with many Japanese universities, and they provide us with information about their programs that they're looking for foreign students to apply. So we have direct contact with admission officers at many universities, and they provide us with program informations. Sometimes some of the information there are not on their website, so we get exclusive information from them that we can then use to share with you. So based on the information that we get, we can provide tips and advice to help you get into your universities that you want to go to and the programs you want to go to much easier than if you are applying for it yourself. Okay, so we can provide you many information that it might be very difficult for you to find on your own. That's it. We have our website and we have our Facebook, YouTube channel. We'll provide this information later on to you. Separately over email so that you can remember these. Okay, so that's it. Do you have any questions? If you have any questions, again, I unfortunately I cannot hear you, but you can maybe write it down in the chat and I can answer them. Okay. Okay, well, if there's no questions, then we can probably finish. Oh, okay, there it is. Okay, first question. Okay, as a Nigerian, how you get access to what you presented now? Okay, I guess what I presented is a document that I made myself, so I can send it to you by email afterwards. Yeah, I can send you the PowerPoint. That's not a problem. Yeah. I will send it to you after we finish this meeting. Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions? Well, I mean, if you don't have any questions, any other questions right now, that's not a problem. We have email contact with, I believe, Zubair, right? And we can communicate by email, or you can talk to us on Facebook. We'll send you the Facebook link later on too, so that you know you can send a message to us. Okay, great. Thank you very much.